We got the choir here. Okay, so let's arm the choir. How many people who are avoiding GMOs noticed an improvement in your health? Raise your hand. Okay, now I do this all over North America. I ask people to describe the symptoms that improve. We don't have time for that now. At 3 o'clock we'll be going more into that and what the doctors are seeing when they prescribe non-GMO diets, and there's thousands of them. We'll talk about the immune system problems, the reproductive disorders, the gastrointestinal disorders, the mental problems, etc., all related to GMOs. But what I want to talk about now is a more generic aspect about food and medicine and how GMOs fit into that generic model. And for the generic model, I mean ancient. Ayurveda has one of the most comprehensive evaluations of the role of food for health. And to summarize the role, it says that with the wrong food, no medicine will work. With the right food, no medicine is necessary.
No kidding.
Now, I heard an Ayurvedic doctor describe a very deep understanding of how the food works. He said the human body is an expression of all the laws of nature that function in a certain sequential manner. And that when the sequence is adequately expressing, there's health in the body. But sometimes the sequence of the laws of nature becomes disrupted. And so we take an herb. So let's say our ear has a problem because of that sequence. So we take an herb which is created from the same laws of nature that structure our ear, and it has the sequence intact. We take the herb, and there's a resonance. And the proper sequence in the herb resets the sequence in our body, and that's how food and herbs and gems are all described as healthy in Ayurveda. Now let's just take this model for a moment and see, is this relevant at all based on modern medicine, based on modern biology? Well, if we look at where the sequence is in food, we see layers of the sequence. We see the DNA, the most compactified expression of intelligence in the biological world. A very specific sequence. And that gets translated or transcribed into RNA. And RNA gets translated into proteins. The proteins interact to produce the secondary metabolites or the phytonutrients that make blueberries healthy and broccoli healthy. But when you disrupt the DNA, you may be taking that same level of intelligence and turning it into disinformation. So that when you eat a food that has the improper sequence, the disinformed sequence, the Monsanto-derived sequence, then it may in fact be creating a resonance to affect the expression of our health in a negative way. Now that's the theory. Let's just take a look at the facts. First of all, when you insert a gene into a plant, you're disrupting the sequence, obviously, because you're taking a gene from a different kingdom, bacteria, putting it into soybeans or corn. Along the sides of that insertion, you often have mutations disrupting the sequence even further. You clone the cell into a plant as part of the process. Now you have hundreds or thousands of mutations up and down the DNA. And you can change the levels of expression in up to 5% of the existing genes. And so now we're eating corn that not only produces a toxic insecticide as designed, but one of the genes which is normally silent is switched on and it produces an allergen. And the GM corn, but not the non-GM corn. When we eat the soybeans, it not only has an insecticide-tolerant gene allowing the crop to be sprayed with Roundup, a toxic insecticide, it also has up to 7 times the amount of a known allergen because of this massive collateral damage that occurs as a result of the process of genetic engineering. Now that's in the crop. What happens when we eat the crop? They looked at laboratory animals fed Monsanto's corn compared to the exact same type of corn. The only difference was it wasn't genetically engineered. Then they looked at the expressions of the genes in the lab animal and found 439 genes change their levels of expression. So the food reprograms our DNA expression. So it reprograms the DNA of the crop, and somehow food reprograms gene expression in human beings. Now let's take a look at the next level, RNA. Now they discovered recently that when they fed RNA to mice, it reprogrammed the expression of a protein in the liver. And it turns out that that's one of the ways that the intelligence of nature affects human beings. We eat the plant's RNA help program the expression of our DNA. Now the RNA in the genetically engineered crops is messed up. In genetically modified soybeans, the RNA was much longer than it was supposed to be. It was a completely different sequence. It never appeared in nature. The cell divided into 4 different variants. We don't know what it can do. We do know that small pieces of RNA, double-stranded RNA, can silence genes or switch on genes. And this is a whole new level of genetic engineering, which is even more dangerous than the current level, and this is their next generation. There's a wheat, a genetically modified wheat, under consideration for approval. It creates a double-stranded RNA, and it might interfere with our gene expression. And they're not even checking to see if this little sequence, which they're creating intentionally in the crop, fits like a key into our DNA. So this is a higher level of problem than we're seeing now on the rise. Now we look at the proteins. Now the proteins change. There's some proteins increase, like an allergen, or decrease. Let's just take a look at the protein introduced intentionally into corn called Bt corn. It's designed as an insecticide. It breaks open the stomach of insects to kill them, creating little holes in the cell walls and leakage. But Health Canada tells us, don't worry, it has no effect on human beings or mammals, and it's destroyed during digestion. They ignore the peer-reviewed published studies. Most recently, they found that when they exposed this Bt toxin derived from Monsanto's corn to human cells, it pokes holes in the cells, causing leakage. And in Sherbrooke Medical College, or Medical University,